Hey there, Astros fans. This is another World Championship edition of Locked On Astros. We got a special guest. David Samson is going to bring a New York state of mind to the Houston Astros, an outside perspective. We hear a lot of what you guys think and you girls think, but David Samson is a voice that if you've listened to him on social media or heard his takes on NBC Sports, he has a lot of really good things to say about the Astros. So let's get into it. Let's have a great show and see what the outsiders think about our beloved Houston Astros.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Astros, your daily Astros podcast. Here are your hosts, Eric the Man Huysman and Brett H-Town Wheelhouse Chancey.
We are Locked On Houston Astros, and we hope that you join us for a daily Locked On Astros podcast. My name is Eric Huysman. You can find me on Twitter at Eric Talks Astros. Find the show at Locked On Astros, your team every day. Brett, where can I find you at?
They can find me at H-Town Wheelhouse on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. They can find me at Stros411 on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Always positive, always Stros.
All right, we have a guest, and we're not talking about the former president of the Marlins, David Samson. We're talking about David Samson. So where can they find you on Twitter?
You can find me at David P. Samson on Twitter. You can find my show, Nothing Personal, with David Samson every day. It's both on YouTube, Nothing Personal with David Samson, and then wherever you get your podcasts. We do it every day, 45 minutes, really bring people behind the curtain, tell them what's going on in the world of sports, culture, politics, entertainment, and happy to be here with you guys. Glad we could set this up.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for joining us.
All right, so I can't help but notice that you've got a lot of Marlins merchandise behind you. You got Sparky jersey. You've got the Stanton. I'm guessing that's a Stanton when he was with the Marlins, and a whole bunch of baseballs back there. So you big Marlins fan?
Well, 16 out of my 18 years running a major league team were with the Marlins, so you do accrue a lot of stuff. 2 of the years were with the Expos, so I have some Expos things as well. I also love movies. I watch a movie every day. I review a movie every day on my show, so I've got some movie memorabilia back there. I've got some Survivor stuff from when I was on Survivor. You can see my torch in the background, which was snuffed way, way too early, as in like the first one out on Survivor 28. So it's sort of a this is your life type of thing.
You know, you've had a voice on radio, on TV, through your podcast, just various mediums. You've been in and out of Major League Baseball. And really the biggest story going is the run that this Houston Astros team is on. And what really caught my attention after we had initially kind of talked and tried to set things up was your take on the Houston Astros. And I really thought for us as fans, it hit home because it's like finally somebody outside of Houston is saying what we've been saying about how good this team is.
Well, I come at it from a different perspective. I competed against the Houston Astros for my entire career. And I guess I would say I competed against 29 teams every year. And the thing about baseball is that at the end, there's only one winner. There's 29 of us in the room and at owners' meetings, and there's 29 losers and one winner. And you give that winner a round of applause during the November owners' meetings, and then everyone starts again, tied for first and tied for last. But there's certain organizations that always got more attention than others. I would say the Tampa Bay Rays get a lot of attention within the owners' meetings because of the success they have with low payrolls. I would say the Yankees and the Dodgers get a lot of attention. And now with Steve Cohen owning the Mets, they get a lot of attention. But one team above all of them recently, and I would say recently going back almost 10 years now, is the Astros. And the reason is that they made a commitment to do something that the rest of us were either unwilling to make, or if we did make it, we didn't do it well enough. And what do I mean? The tanking, which is a word that I don't use as a former president of a team. It's rebuilding, it's retooling, it's figuring out when your window is open and when it's closed. And I want to take a minute on that. That is the single most important thing for any team, is to know when you're chasing Amy or when you actually have a window to win. And when that window closes, you can't go for it. And when it's ready to open, you have to go for it. And the Astros were really good about that. You remember the 3 years, I know your audience does, when the Astros lost over 100 games a year, right? They were absolutely horrific for a period of time, but it was all with a plan, and they never strayed, right? There was no Edwin Jackson signing like when the Cubs were tanking and they signed Edwin Jackson for that 5-year, $55 million deal because their owner couldn't take it, right? Tom Ricketts couldn't handle the losing, so he signed a mediocre pitcher for a ton of money. Jim Crane has always been very clear since he took over. I was in the room. I was part of the vote that approved him. And since he took over, he's always had a clear vision of what he wanted and how he wanted it to be run. And it could have gone off the rails after Jeff got let go and after AJ got let go. But to his credit, it stayed on the tracks and it resulted in the second World Series.
And go ahead, Eric.
Do you think, speaking of Luhnow, do you think that he would ever work in baseball again?
I do not. And the reason I do not is for the same reason why Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens will never be in the Hall of Fame. And the reason, in my opinion, is that they never owned up to what they did. And the fact of the matter is, while you can say they never tested positive for steroids, that's fine. Did they do it? I think that everyone can make their own judgment, and I think you'll all come to the same conclusion. And you look at some players who did steroids, who got caught or who didn't get caught, but who admitted to it. And forgiveness in our world, especially in America, we love the redemption story. We love to forgive, right? Look at Tiger Woods, a great redemption story. And Jeff was pretty resolute right after this happened. Hey, I have no idea. This is not me. And that just is not accurate, right? There's one thing about Jeff as a great executive, and I can tell you as a president of a team, if anyone in my organization were doing something the way the Astros were, I would know about it. And if I didn't know about it, I would say I knew about it because it would be so damn embarrassing to not know about it. And then I'd resign. And that's what I would always tell my owner is, hey, if something happens, I'm going to take the fall because you're the owner, I'm the president. But I think it's beyond credibility that Jeff didn't know. And he chose a different path. He chose the path of fighting and saying, this is, head in the sand. And that's just not how he operated at all.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And I know there's still people today that really kind of credit him as most of the players on this team being the guys that he brought along. I mean, even down to Yordan Alvarez. And, the first time he was even told about him, he was like, oh, okay, whatever. And he kind of shoved it off. But then he came in and he went ahead and made the trade. And we sent Fields to the Dodgers. And now we have one of the greatest hitters in all of, it seems like in all of baseball. Now, I want to ask you a Hall of Fame question because it does come up from time to time. Someone like Jose Altuve, we know the stuff that's come out about him, quote unquote, not using the trash can banging scheme. And he did come out and say, look, if one of us is it, then all of us are it. And he's really kind of taken on, he's never shielded himself from the team. He's never said, I'm not blameless. It's the fans that have always picked up for him, Correa when he was here, the other players. But Jose Altuve, is he in danger of just being maybe missed on the first ballot, but eventually makes it to the Hall of Fame? Or do you think he does enough or has done enough in his career that gets overlooked by the time he's up for a vote?
So I would say that as he stands now, I'd have to think whether he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he's certainly on his way. I would argue pretty persuasively that if he doesn't have another at-bat in the major leagues, that he would be a Hall of Famer. I'm not sure if he didn't take another at-bat that he would be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but there's no question inside the game, and the writers know it too, his abilities on the field are Hall of Fame abilities. The way he's handled what's been surrounding Houston for so many years now, he has handled it really well. I'll never forget, we were watching the press conference during spring training at the new stadium that Houston had when they paraded out Jose and was it Alex?
Alex Bregman, yes.
Who were paraded out to talk, and how uncomfortable they were, how unprepared really they were. And I was thinking about, and I talked about this on my show, that they needed a PR person to have helped them. but he handled it the best way he could. And since then, he's gotten some good media training because he's been great. The hiring of Dusty Baker has been amazing in terms of forward facing and how to handle the issues that continue to come up. And what they really were waiting for this whole time since the scandal broke was to get another ring. And getting to the World Series 4 times in 6 years, outstanding. But if they had lost this past year, I think that really would have hurt. But them winning helped so much redefine what this dynasty is. And make no mistake, your Astros right now, they are a full-fledged dynasty.
So you're saying that it's a safe bet to say that Jose Altuve is going to be a Hall of Famer. And since we're talking about safety, I want to talk to y'all about Simply Safe. At Locked On Astros, we believe your home should be where you and your family feel safest, especially over the holidays. This season, give yourself and your family the peace of mind and protection of the #1 rated home security system, Simply Safe. Right now, Simply Safe is offering Locked On Astros listeners 40% off a new security system. So don't put this off. My experience has been that my family comes first, and it has helped avert any dangers that I may think loom around my house. I get to use the simple and easy to use app. It has HD cameras I can see anytime I want. If I have friends that are coming over watching the house and I need to let them in, I can do that from my phone. They have 24/7 monitoring by actual agents, people. You don't talk to robots, you talk to humans, and that's a personal touch. The best home security system of 2022, voted by U.S. News and World Report for the 3rd year in a row. And not only that, it's cost efficient. The service costs under $1 a day, less than half the price of traditional home security systems. So at the top rated Simply Safe app, stay in complete control with the system. Anytime, anywhere, you can adjust your system. So don't miss this chance to save big on my favorite security system. Get 40% off any new system at simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb. That's simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
Alrighty, so let's kind of divert from the past and focus to what just happened. The Astros did win another World Series, so that we can take away a little bit from the sting of the scandal. I know that the Astros lost Justin Verlander, but they still have a promising future. So let's kind of steer towards that direction. So, David, what was your takeaway from the historic 2022 season for the Houston Astros?
So let's talk about what it is to be a good executive. A good executive knows when it's time to let a player go versus holding on and using emotion following a World Series and keeping a player when it's not appropriate or not necessary or not the right allocation of money. In 2021, the Atlanta Braves won the World Series, and they let Freddie Freeman go to the Dodgers, and they instead thought that they had a better chance over the long term, having won that World Series, having Matt Olson at first base. The Houston Astros put together an unbelievable team with great success, and all of a sudden, Carlos Correa is a free agent, and they say, we're going to allocate our dollars elsewhere. And in comes the LCS and World Series MVP rookie Jeremy Pena for $700,000 instead of paying Correa 25 or 30 or $35 million. That's good business, and it translates onto the field. You've got to be able to run your business in a way where you can keep your window open and make decisions, not with your heart, but with your head. And the Justin Verlander decision is a perfect example. There was no reason in the world to sign Justin Verlander to a 2-year, $86 million deal. Zero. It would not have helped the Astros. But when they say, hey, this is about defending our World Series title, we want to get there 5 out of 7 years, win 2 in a row, be the first team to go back-to-back since the Yankees of 98 to 2000. I agree. All of that is admirable, and that's what they're doing. But you still have to do it in a way that makes sense. And when you look at the Astros rotation and you look at McCullers and Garcia and Urquidy, they don't need to allocate the money that way. And so they let him go. And I thought that was brilliant. And by the way, when you reallocate that money and you replace Gurriel with Abreu, think about what you're doing. You're making your team better. Over the course of 162, you're bringing in a top clubhouse person, top. He's one of the top 10 in all of baseball. You guys are going to fall in love with him. This guy's a leader, not just of the Latino clique, but of the white clique, the black clique, every clique he's involved in and is a leader. He also has the ability to play above average first base. And he also has the ability, he didn't show his power last year. It sort of went down, but make no mistake, he's a professional hitter that makes your lineup even longer, which was the best lineup in baseball. Sorry, guys, I don't know if you realize this. I got crushed last year for saying that the Astros were a better team than the Yankees. And I did it on Nothing Personal. I did it on Twitter, and I didn't do it in the playoffs. I did it early in the season. That to me, there was no doubt when the Yankees were running away with the best record. I said the Astros are a better team, better lineup, better rotation. And it's not a humble brag. It's just a fact. And it's no different this year, right? The Yankees brought back Judge. Great. That's the same as they were last year. The Astros are still a better team in 23 than the Yankees are. And the window is still wide open. And losing Verlander, bringing in Abreu, that makes you even a better team.
It's funny you mentioned that because right now there's kind of a Twitter civil war going between people who don't mind Maldonado coming back with making sure you're bringing up one of your guys, whether it's Yanner Diaz as backup or Corey Lee as backup, and letting Christian Vasquez walk, not giving him the start, not signing Wilson Contreras, seeing Sean Murphy. Now Dalton Varsho is in the topic, and who knows where this leads us. But I really think if you're talking about being a not only smart businessman, but one of the things we've noticed and people we talk to that are close to the organization is that Jim Crane is a smart baseball guy, and he tends to make the right moves. And so people almost have this theory, well, it's Jim Crane and these three guys are like his assistants to the regional manager type GMs. And then they're letting all these catchers go. And what are they doing? Maldonado had sports hernia surgery and a broken hand. And I'm like, look, we had two really bad bats last year in Maldonado and Yuli Gurriel. Yuli Gurriel was not good offensively last year, right? Like you said, replaced him with Jose Abreu. Now we bring back Maldi. He's rested. He's healthy. He's your stellar veteran. How key is it to have someone for a pitching staff and a group of pitchers of Maldonado's ilk, of Maldonado's professionalism, the hours that he spends versus going out and selling the farm or trading away key pitchers just to improve the bat of your catcher when I don't know that you need to have a 1 through 9 stellar hitter.
Yeah, so you bring up a great point. When you're putting together a team, it's like putting together a jigsaw puzzle. And the teams who say they need an offensive catcher are saying that because they don't have enough offense through the rest of the lineup in the typically offensive positions, right? They're not good enough at the corners, either in the infield or the outfield. So they say we need a good bat. We need good bats up the middle, as an example. And so they're willing to trade defense for offense. If you're the Astros lineup, you do not make that trade. You want defense more than offense. And Maldonado is an example of someone who you can't let go. The pitchers love throwing to him, and don't underestimate how important that is. Pitchers don't care. Think about this statement for a minute. You think that pitchers want runs, right? Because they want run support, that they're very focused on that. What pitchers are really focused on is who's got the fingers and how they're calling the game and what makes them better as pitchers, because that's how they get paid. They don't get paid more or less if they have seven runs of support a game or 2 runs of support a game. They're paid with the number of runs they give up, which has nothing to do with your offense. So when you have someone like Maldonado, someone who helps pitchers, who lowers pitchers' ERA because of his game plans that are and the pitchers buy into, that is priceless. And so they have filled their offensive lineup without the need for an offensive catcher, and I love that. Good for them, and they should keep going.
All right. So I guess that you wouldn't bet on the Astros trading for Dalton Varsho. We can talk about that in a second. You on the Astros maybe going out and trading for anybody else or maybe signing a backup catcher. But guys, if you want to go bet or find the odds for something you want to bet on, go to betonline.net. It's your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college sports season to basketball and World Cup. We got it all at betonline.net. What are the odds for the Astros winning the World Series? What about all these teams that are stacking up to compete with the Astros? What are their odds? So if you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. So I know, David, you brought up a good point about having a defensive catcher. You don't need to really, you're not paying. And I think Maldonado even mentioned this last year. They're not paying me to hit. They're paying me to catch and be a good defender. So if you were the president of the Astros or if whatever, would you make that Dalton Varsho trade?
So I don't specifically know what trade you're talking about and who are the assets going back and forth, but
Nobody knows. Yeah.
I'm going to be very careful when what I say here. I'm willing to trade anybody at any time, right? So my line always was this running a team. Everybody is available for trade, but some are more likely to be traded than others. That would be the line that I would say about Giancarlo Stanton, or I would say it about the 25th man on the roster or a prospect. And that is how the best teams do it. The reason I only got one ring is I made some regrettable decisions, some bad signings, couldn't combine the pitching with the hitting, had good hitting. You know, we had Stanton, Yelich, Ozuna, but we couldn't pitch. Then we had Jose Fernandez, and then we couldn't hit properly. So it's been an interesting ride when you put together a team for it all to come together and then for that togetherness to result in a ring. And the best chance of winning multiple rings is to put yourself in position, which is what the Astros do, what the Dodgers do, what the Yankees do. When you're in the playoffs, that's your only chance of getting the ring. So I'm not going to say I wouldn't trade for a catcher. I would never say that. But imagine if the Astros had traded Jeremy Pena for a reliever at a trade deadline. And I'm the king of this. I traded Luis Castillo to get, people. I traded Descalfani to get Matt Latos. I mean, I would trade prospects all the time because I wanted to win at the major league level. Right. And I would always worry about tomorrow. But the better way to do it is to worry about tomorrow today and to maximize today without forgetting tomorrow. Because in baseball, one of the worst expressions we have is see you next year. Wait till next year. It's not a year. Spring training starts in 2 months, and the World Series ended a month ago. That's why when players would come back from the offseason and say, oh, I spent the year of the offseason getting in better shape, I would laugh. I'd be like, it's 12 weeks. Like, what are you talking about? You couldn't have done that naturally. So I think that the years happen very, very quickly. And 2023 is right around the corner. So trading prospects is a very dangerous game.
Yeah, and that's the thing with this whole Dalton Varsho, just to give you a little bit of insight, his value, like the only barometer we really have is MLB trade values, and he's got a high number, like around 60 something, 70 points, to where it would take someone like a Luis Garcia, a Christian Javier, a Hunter Brown. It would be really expensive. And here's the thing: Dalton Varsho is not a great catcher. He's a very good center fielder. He has a power bat. He's got a solid arm. He can play 2 or 3 different positions. He plays left field, center. I think he plays some infield. He can, and he's caught. And so this is a kid that I think someone in the Astros organization, values. But I believe that if a Hunter Brown or even Luis Garcia or even Christian Javier are on the table, I'm absolutely saying no, because you did lose Verlander and you are down to a 5-man rotation. Honestly, I would like to go to a 6-man rotation because of Lance McCullers. Lance McCullers Jr. has not been able to stay healthy on a consistent basis. And I think they should give Lance McCullers, I want to get your thoughts on this. I think they should treat Lance McCullers like they treated Justin Verlander this last year. Treat him like he's a 39-year-old coming off of Tommy John to conserve his load management, to where when you get to the playoffs, he's not spent, he's not overthrown, and he can contribute in the playoffs this next year even more so than he did. We saw he had that one game where he faltered, gave up the 5 home runs.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Lance McCullers needs to be almost exclusively on a 6-man type rotation. What do you think? I mean, how do you manage a guy, because you're paying him 5 years, 85? He's bury me in the H. He's Mr. Houston. How do you handle a guy like that?
So your point is interesting, and here's what we did. 6-man rotations really don't work because the
Okay.
natural flow of a season is getting the 4 days rest, sometimes 3 days rest, but not often. But the extra day, and if you ask Justin Verlander, he would tell you that the best pitchers, the best veteran pitchers, have a routine that's in between starts, and they don't want that extra day.
Okay.
However, skipping a start now and then, pushing them back a day or two now and then, I'm all good with that. I never had a problem with putting people on the DL with phantom injuries. We would make up injuries sometimes and just put people on the DL. It's now called the IL. Have them
Yep.
miss 2 weeks, but they're still pitching. They're not losing their arm strength, right? We're having them throw games, simulated games with the minor league complex. But there's 2 things about a team that you should know. Whatever your rotation is and your bullpen in April, I promise you that the odds are over 90% that will not be your pitching staff in October. There's always additions and subtractions because of injury and lack of performance. So you need starting pitching depth. Our number with a low revenue, low payroll team, we always on our board where we would write down in the offseason what our projected team was and what the lineup in our mind was and how many wins we needed to find from the previous season. We always had a 12 down under starting pitching. We needed to have 12 names because our view was, and it turned out to be right just about every year, that 12 different men are going to be a starting pitcher. And I don't mean the openers. I mean 12 legitimate, stretched out starting pitchers are needed to get through a season on average. I don't remember the last time there was a successful team that went five people through the rotation for 30 starts each, right? I don't remember that happening. And maybe it's recency bias and it happened recently, but I can't think of it. So I would not trade a performing young starting pitcher for a prospect, especially when you're in your window of winning. That does not make sense to me.
Yeah, so I think, like you said earlier, the Astros had to make a decision about Justin Verlander. They felt like they have the depth to go ahead and do that. If they make the Varsho trade, they're going to have to possibly give up maybe Luis Garcia, maybe Jose Urquidy. They'll further deplete their options for the rotation. So that's something that they have to consider. But looking at the Astros lineup as it sits right now, I know they added Jose Abreu. We've already talked about the catching position. There is some questions about I know Alvarez is going to play between 40 and 70% left field, but the rest of the time he'll be playing DH. The Astros need to go out and get a big name person for that role, or can they just have a young guy kind of step up?
So the way we do that is we write down the number of innings we have to pitch during the season and the number of at-bats that we think we're going to have during the course of a season. And then you sort of allocate what you think, what you're expecting from pitchers. We expect this pitcher to have 150 innings. We expect this one out of the bullpen is okay for 70 innings. And you have to add it all up because you have to find people to take up innings. We never budgeted for position player innings pitched, right? What we're seeing a lot of now during mop-up time, you don't budget for that at all. When it comes to at-bats in the designated hitter slot, we would have different candidates available is what you would do when you're working for an American League team and now for both. So we never had a designated hitter, but we would talk about what we would do, which is what we did for other positions, is you allocate in your mind what is a reasonable expectation for at-bats from a position. So for me, when you say that you have Alvarez in for 40, 70%, we would look at it differently. That our expectation of him is that he's going to play 150 to 155 games, and we'll worry about whether he's going to DH or play left field. You have to factor in how he's feeling that day, what's going on with his body. Are there nagging injuries? Who the opposing pitcher is, who your pitcher is. There's all sorts of different factors you can use. But what the Astros are good at, and this is what differentiates really great teams from just good teams or okay teams, is sometimes the biggest name is not the best plan. And you don't need a brilliant owner or GM to sign Trey Turner, right? You need a brilliant owner and GM to tell you not to sign Trey Turner because you have Jeremy Pena, right? Not to let Correa go because we've got Jeremy. To not trade for or have Mookie Betts on your team because that is not the allocation of salary that we need. And the fact that Jim Crane's willing to do that, and it's not like you guys have a small payroll. It's not like he's not spending money, but spending money smartly, that's the name of the game. And the Dodgers are the best at it. And the Mets, by letting Jacob deGrom go, they're beginning to scare a lot of owners right now, because if the Mets are willing to operate more like the Dodgers than the Padres, where the Padres just go after names, they don't care. But if the Mets start being smart the way the Dodgers are, the way the Astros are, the Mets are a real threat.
Yeah, they are. They've made some crazy moves, and I know Cohen's into that like 80 million tax, and I was looking at it's like 2% of his net worth is 80 million. So it doesn't really hurt him financially, but signing the pitcher that they got at the price they got him was, I thought, a very good signing for them. But the Astros, I think, for left field could easily bring back a Brantley. Someone told me Conforto was going to be asking 20 million. I don't see how he asked for 20 million coming off of an injury. I
Oh,
don't know
I
where they
do.
got that.
He
Oh,
has
really? You
Scott
think?
Boras as an agent.
Well,
That's how.
that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
I just, I would have a hard time. Look, I've never had that kind of money, but I would have a hard time giving anyone 20 million coming off of a shoulder injury, especially seeing the way Myers came back, seeing that,
He's
Brantley's
going to need
not
to prove
really
health, right?
exactly,
That's what Conforto will
exactly.
have to do. And Boris is not willing to have him do that. He wants him to sign to a long-term deal. And I can tell you, if Boris finds a sucker to sign Conforto to a long-term deal, then shame on owners, because Conforto should have a 1-year deal, prove health, prove performance, and then get his long-term deal. It doesn't make sense. But a lot of what's going on this offseason with paying players late into their 30s, if not 40, find me a position player who's been successful late. And that's the one small concern I have about Jose Abreu. I think that I'm not positive that the third year was the right plan. But I understand sometimes you do things like that. And the way you do the math, just so you guys know how the front office works, if you sign Abreu to 60 million for 3, rough numbers, what you do is you say you were willing and you believe that you would have done 30 times 2. So you do the 2 years at 30 million a year. You think that's the value. And whatever you get in the third year is bonus. If you get anything, great. If not, you got the 2 years you expected to get. And that's how you can rationalize going longer than you really want to.
I know you've already said that last year. You said the Astros are better than Yankees. With the moves that both teams have made, and the other teams that the other moves that the other teams have made in the American League, are the Astros still the favorites in the American League, in your opinion?
So you're not going to be able to sucker me into an answer, and here's why. All the odds makers and all of the books and all of the media, people in the media, and I'm in the media now, so it's funny, but this is not what I do for a living, predicting like that. And here's why. Winning the offseason doesn't mean anything.
Right.
And teams love it, man. They love the press conferences. I like Jim Crane giving Jose Abreu his jersey and smiling. I've done all those press conferences. I thought I was king of the world in 2012, signing Jose Reyes and Heath Bell and Mark Burley. The Marlins win the offseason. We're on the cover of Sports Illustrated with Jose Reyes and Ozzie Guillen in a new stadium, and we stunk. So winning the offseason does not matter. I want to see what happens until spring training starts. I make my season predictions on Nothing Personal at the end of spring training as the season is starting, because the front offices are doing a lot of work until then and through that point. So I'm not willing to say. What I will tell you, though, about the Astros, they are not any worse off without Justin Verlander. And that sounds difficult to say, but if you asked me, would I trade Verlander for Abreu? Not every team would I say yes to, but the Astros and what they needed at first base versus what they have in terms of starting pitching depth, that's a trade that I would make. And on top of that, you save $23 million because Verlander at 43, Abreu at 20.
Right.
So that is a trade I would make any day. So the Astros did not get any worse. So it would be hard not to call them an early favorite.
Exactly. I love it. I couldn't have said it any better. Of course, your experience is second to none compared to ours. And David, I just wrote an article for 103.7 The Game in Louisiana, and the title is Success in the Offseason Doesn't Equal Spending the Most Money. And my tagline is, and spending the most money doesn't always equal success. I just don't see how you have to just go out and, hey, it's like when I give my 14-year-old son, when he gets $100 for his birthday, what does he do? He spends $101, and he thinks it's a success. I'm like, no, save some of that, be budget minded. But to close things out, tell us, do you think Kyle Tucker is a $400 million player? And we'll close it with that.
So I have a hard time saying that anybody's a $400 million player,
Right.
because it's very hard to make that, to tell you that's a smart business. And let's go back to Correa versus Pena. If you have a good enough front office, you can get the same, if not better, production for $1 million as you can for 30 or 40 million. If you're asking me if Kyle Tucker is one of the best players in baseball, would I want him on my team, both on and off the field? You're damn right I would. But if you're asking me whether I would sign him to a 10-year, $400 million contract, the answer is no, I would not.
That makes sense, and it falls in line with what you've talked about and your experience and what the Astros are doing. And we are so thankful that we have a good owner, a smart owner like Jim Crane. And I see this championship window. I see it open through 27, to be quite honest. But David, thank you so much for your expertise, for your knowledge, and thank you for not scolding me for not remembering or recalling the fact that you were the former owner of the
President.
president of the Marlins. You
No problem at all.
you have been in the front office, and we definitely want to have you back on because I think your experience is second to none. And guests like you make our show even better. For myself, H-Town Wheelhouse, he's Eric the Man Huysman. He is David Samson. Check him out at David P. Samson on Twitter. Check Eric out on Eric Talk Stros, and myself at H-Town Wheelhouse. Y'all have a good one. Happy holidays, and let's just be patient and wait for the pitchers and catchers to report so we can watch another title run with the Houston Astros. Go Stros.
Go Astros.